Good morning. Good morning. Um, okay. I'm in a new setup that is not a good setup, but it is a setup. So this is my standing desk, and I have this just ridiculous fluorescent light up here. I wish I had something blocking it a little bit, but whatever. This is down on my workbench in my basement, and per per my love of Peter Rollins and per or at least the way that he portrays his ideas, and per what up, Tile, and per Mr. Lance Cleaver, Foxman. Good morning, sir. Um, I want to do some of this video. I want to do like a Paul-like commentary on it. I mean, it's a longer video. Lance said this, and I think it's very true. Once you get what Rollins is saying here, it will bring together so many different ideas that I think are very important. And I've learned through my time in life and the TLC that different. I mean, I guess it's almost further validation of personalist knowing that different people can say, which they can say to me, things that are like the same things, but people hear it differently. For whatever reason, So like Phoebus made the comment in the last live stream or whatever that in there was a section that Nate was talking about the proper place and role of propositional knowing. And I know this is something that I say all the time that really irks people. And Phoebus was like saying, "Oh, that was really great. That really clarified a lot of things for me." And I was just, and to me, like initially, I'm like, "Well, wonderful, fantastic. Nate is great. Nate though great." But I'm also like, that's my position. So I don't know why when I say it, at least to me, or what I'm seeing wrong, that it bothers Phoebus or some people. Like somebody left a comment the other day that I tried to reply to, and there was like errors, and it was a pretty not nice comment. It was something like because I was lamenting in the other video of why I don't know why I fire people up so much, and and uh, and they made the comment of, they were like, because you're so condescending about something, and you have, I mean, I can't remember all the things they said, but then I went to reply to it and it was gone. So I don't know. I definitely ruffle feathers. I'm not as irenic, I guess, as I would like to be, or I speak too strongly about things, or I don't say it in a way that's winsome, because I think it's valuable. It's a very how to win friends and influence people, like that. The thing that stuck with me most about that book is the second chapter. He opens up by saying, "No one will listen to you unless they want to." And let me say that again: no one will listen to you unless they want to. So if we're going to be in an arena talking about ideas, sharing about ideas, thinking what we, trying to have a seat at the table, play the game of engaging about ideas, and you want to put forward ideas rather than just listen and digest and do the lurk or whatever, which is fine too. It's all fine. You need to say it in a way where people can hear it. And so I want to improve at that. I want to get better at that. And so, thank you, Alan. I appreciate that. I don't. It's not even a. It's not even a contradiction of please continue to be strong in your ideas. It's not even a contradiction of I might have to pause things to engage with children because they're all home today for Eid. It's not so much as not being strong in your contradictions. You can be extremely strong in your convictions, but yet not unnecessarily isolating those with whom you disagree. And whose response? I guess it's a very like Jeremy was saying the other day. For me, it's a very Christian, Jesus, Pauline approach to say, when we say chief of sinners, I am the chief of sinners. What that means isn't like this POS theology browbeating thing. That's another thing that person in that comment replied to, the POS theology. They didn't like my framing of that, which, I mean, it's slightly, I don't know. It just came to me. I wasn't didn't formulate it. It just spontaneously came to me. I didn't formulate it to tick people off, but it is, what's the word? It is spicy, or it's, you know, I understand how it can be that way. But, so, shoot, I lost my train of thought. Anyhow, so what's up, Ron? So anyhow, let's get into this video with Rollins. It's just, it's really, really good. And the way that because that's the question. One of my big things is divided man, where you are not in the quick version of what that is. If I can try to describe it, it is the person who is tossed to and fro by every wave of doctrine in St. James, and who is a double-minded man, unstable in all he does, from James 1. And or it is in Jesus in John 7, I believe, when he says, the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eye is one, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is evil or divided or not at one, not integrated, your whole body will be full of darkness, and woe to you. So divided man is he whom is Romans 7, the one in whom the divine spark, or who has not received fully with meekness the implanted word. And so you are not integrated. Your left brain and your right brain is not in harmony. It's not with the master and the emissary. You are not the kind of man who is properly oriented toward, you could say, I've been talking with Neil and Chadrick about this, the eternal you, the white stone you, your potentially your guardian angel, the evolutionary telotic you that Sam talks about, the perfect you, the whole mystery of Christ in me. You're not properly aligned to that, and so you deliberate. You don't know what to do. You're divided. Whereas I think when you are properly aligned to God and submitted to that reality, like the Theotokos, it's not my will, but your will. And your will is in obedience and subjection to God's, and your will and God's will become one. And it's the same as the light of your eye. It's the same as taking your log out of your eye so you can see clearly, all that stuff. So what drives divided man? He who is not there, he who suppresses the truth and unrighteousness, which would be, I suppose, all of us, huh? So, yeah, let's get into this video. I'm going to play some Peter here. I think this should work. Let's go. How do I play?
Promised in the last video that I would talk about enjoyment and how we got our enjoyment from life. And I want to talk a little bit about the difference between what we can call ideological enjoyment and emancipatory enjoyment. So I'm going to use, again, kind of like some technical terms, but I'll explain them all, and I'm going to give plenty of examples to, I think, illustrate what I'm trying to say. So we'll start with the idea of enjoyment. I'm actually going to use the term jouissance. So we're going to talk about ideological jouissance and emancipatory jouissance. And the reason why I'm using the term jouissance, it's a French term, and it's a technical term in continental philosophy that describes a type of enjoyment. Now, some theorists, someone like Todd McGowan, he just uses enjoyment, and I understand why. He thinks sometimes these technical terms are more unhelpful than they are helpful. But I want to use the term because there's something missing in the word enjoyment that jouissance captures. Enjoyment connotes in English that you're getting some sort of pleasure from something. And there can be a distinction made between pleasure and enjoyment that's important. Pleasure might be what I get out of drinking this coffee, and enjoyment is what I get out of thinking about drinking the coffee, right? So you enjoy the lead up to Christmas, and you get pleasure out of opening the presents. But jouissance also captures something, I think, much kind of deeper. Jouissance brings together at least three different ideas. One is sexuality. So jouissance is about orgasm in French. So there's a sexual dimension. And when you're thinking about the sexual dimension in terms of psychoanalysis, a helpful way to think about it is a type of non-utility enjoyment. So, for example, you can eat food in order to get energy and to feed your body and to feel less tired. So the food has a utility. But if you go to another extreme and you think about a tasting menu, where almost everything about a tasting menu is not about utility, it's about taste. Now, you can even go further than that and think about wine tasting, where you don't even drink the wine. So you might, for utilitarian reasons, drink wine to relax because you want to feel a little bit tipsy, you want to kind of feel a little bit less repressed, whatever it is. There's certain utility to drinking wine. But when you're wine tasting, you're getting rid of that utility and you're concentrating purely on this sensuality. So you can think about sexuality in terms of sensuality like that. So jouissance captures that a type of enjoyment that has a sensual, non-utilitarian value to us. Mm.
All right. Well, while he gets his drink of coffee here, so in watching these things, first off, I would say Peter Rollins is difficult. I think I've often said this is why I talk about him so much. It's because I've benefited a lot from him. I think I don't know, a huge portion of what I would have to contribute intellectually, I've learned from Peter Rollins, I think, and others, but a huge portion from him. And a lot of it is this, divided man stuff and egoic stuff, and then that Polanyi quote: "Doubt and belief are ultimately equivalent. Doubt relies on a subterranean set of tacit belief in something else." So like doubt is just apophatic belief, not this, not that, not what I thought I knew. Which is belief. It's just belief that you don't fully know. Sorry, I'm distracting myself by a lot of things. So when you listen to him, so there's all these levels of understanding, right? Like you can listen to somebody talk and you're like, okay, I think I understand that. And then if you try to repeat it back or something, you're like, well, I can't do that, or put it in your own words, which I think it's really essential to put it in your own words. Sherry was just talking about this she's been talking about this with sacred magic. But in that conversation with Nate and Chezi, which is fantastic, it's really great. Christianity and Judaism on Grail Country here, or this is on my channel, but also Grail Country. So part of a deeper level of understanding is being able to put it in your own words, and then maybe being able to explain it to other people, because there's a lot of my Lukeisms. What that is, and it's part of my personalist knowing, is I'm saying things in my own words. I'm not using a definitional understanding of other people's explanations of things. In a sense, I'm not intellectually plagiarizing. I'm not just repeating in like the trivium, these levels of education and understanding. You have the grammar phase, logic, rhetoric. I'm not just repeating in the grammar phase what somebody else has said and thought, as if that's understanding. You could say that's a Sunday school understanding, which is necessary, it's fine. But then when you say it in your own words, you're wrestling with it yourself. You're making it your own. It's what I call the Eucharistic knowing. This is where, if I were good enough at StreamYard, I'd have a clip queued up of Chad with the dancing apples, one of Chad's first videos in this little corner, playing with my Eucharistic knowing of eating this apple, which was a riff on Jonathan Pageau's symbolism of eating an apple in the Eucharist and having it become you. Unless you eat my body and drink my blood, you have no part in me. So, okay, lost the thread. So saying something in your own words is a key part, I would say, in the progression of properly knowing. And then explaining it, being able to explain it to someone else, is like another level. It's a leveling up thing. It's a deepening. It's not more. Is it more true or less true? It's more fully true. It's more robust. It includes it. It's kind of the spiral of knowing. And so when I listen to Rollins, I'm always learning new things. It's crazy. Like even what he said there, this enjoyment and explaining jouissance, and it's related to orgasm and sexual pleasure. But then he illustrates it by saying, eating. What's the utility of eating? So there's pleasure in eating, right? Because if you're hungry, you're satiating pleasure, and that's a drive. You could even argue that's like an evolutionary drive to just stay alive. Stay alive. Is that the Bee Gees? But then you can also, human beings are interesting this way, and maybe some animals, like our dogs, this way, where you can divorce eating from the pleasure, because this is a huge thing that comes up in my family, because I'm a foodie. I love food. I love talking about food ethics. I grew up on a ranch. I just really like talking about food, ecology, the environment, healthy food, gut biomes, all that stuff. And so there's this constant tension with my family, or in my nuclear family and in my extended family, of because there are people who eat to live and there are people who live to eat. I'm much more in the latter category. I live to eat. I mean, I do both, but I love food. I really like it, and I love nice food. I take immense pleasure in eating, and so I'm more on the spectrum of that. It's the utility is extracted from me. Like one of my things that I say to my wife, because my wife often writes down a lot of the crap that I say, and our kids. It's a brilliant idea. My wife is a brilliant, wonderful woman. But I just say ridiculous things, which is no surprise to you guys. And she'll just be like, "That's ridiculous," and she just writes it down because it's a funny thing to remember. And so she'll say something like, or I said, "I'd rather skip a meal than eat a bad meal," and that's completely true. Yeah, Foxman, me and your mother. Life is too short to eat bad food. Amen. Glorious woman. Temple Grandin. Excellent. I love Temple Grandin. Yeah, she's cool. So developed a lot of really interesting livestock and cattle things. Anyhow, check out Temple Grandin. So I love food. I love eating great food. I tried to start a supper club in Minneapolis where we invited our friends, but it was very food centric. So it was like, I want everybody to make the food, like the enjoyment of food, the pleasure in creating food, of it, like intellectually, in principle, the idea of good food, the quality of it, the beauty of it. Like I wanted to really center this dinner club around eating, around food. Like it was just like a pleasure fest of food, a feast, right? It didn't work because nobody else, because people didn't have that same desire or vision. Other people were just like, oh, this is a utility. This is a means to an end to get together and to have communion. And I'm like, well, yes, but like for me to want to do this, to invest into it, like it has to be good food, because then people would want to just like, because it's hard. It takes time to produce really good quality ethical food. And then people would come and they wouldn't like it just started to devolve from being high quality food to just like a hangout time. And I was like, well, that's not what I want to do. Like that's kind of fine, but that's not what I want to do. So anyhow, back to the Rollins thing. That's what a tasting menu is. It's a separation a little bit of the pleasure in and of itself, the pleasure per se, and the utility of the food eating, because you eat these little small plates, right? So they're not necessarily satiating you. It's just reveling in the pleasure and the presentation of the food and the taste and the quality and the beauty. So almost the transcendentals of food. So you see this separation. It's almost like a Descartesian spiritual and material. It's not just about eating, whereas a symbolic would be both. All of those things together as one. That's the symbolic Eucharistic knowing, but you have the separated thing where it's not just eating, just like I need to survive. I need to eat to live. And it's but it's more of just like the heavenly beauty part of it. And then he'll go on further to talk about wine, where wine tasting, a lot of times you don't drink it at all. You just taste it and then you spit it out. So you've completely separated the utility and the nourishment from it. And it's just about the sense pleasure of it, almost, with wine tasting. So anyhow, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep playing. Sorry. Chezi, good morning. All right, let's go. Let's rock and roll. Ah, no. Going back. Here we are.
A second, jouissance captures the notion of a suffering. So it's not all about something that's pleasurable. Jouissance can be experienced as anxiety. And a good way of thinking about this, which I'm going to come back to maybe a couple of times in this short talk, is that you might, for example, scroll in on Twitter and read people who disagree with you and whose positions you find offensive and destructive and whatever, right? And you find yourself angry, you find yourself anxious, but you're also lured by, you're caught into it, you're grasped by it, right? So there is a type of enjoyment, but the enjoyment isn't experienced as enjoyment, it's experienced as suffering. And so jouissance captures that. Jouissance can be like being on a roller coaster and you're going over the edge and you feel anxious and you're going, why am I doing this? And you're terrified, but you're doing the roller coaster because you're getting something out of it. So jouissance doesn't just mean enjoyment, pleasure. It means a pleasure also in suffering, and it has a sensual dimension. So that's why I want to use the term jouissance, because I think it's a richer term. So then if I'm going to start by talking about ideological jouissance, then I have to give a brief definition of ideology. Todd McGowan actually has a really good video on that on his YouTube channel, so I'd recommend you go and watch it. It's only 15 or 20 minutes long, and I think it gives a really brilliant short description of what ideology, its beginnings, the early use of that term through into Marx and beyond into people like Zizek, and then McGowan's own thoughts on it. So I'm just going to give a very brief definition. And you can say that ideology at its core always is a kind of takes a contingent historical way of looking at the world and renders it eternal, says that's the way things should be. So whether it's slavery or feudalism or capitalism or whatever it is, or some, not just economic system, some political system or some religion, it says this is the truth. And this reflects human nature, or it reflects the will of God, or it reflects reason itself. So you take something that grew up, has a history, has a genealogy, and you render it kind of eternal and the truth. But then connected to that is ideology also has to cover over its antagonisms, the things that prevent the ideology from, so within feudalism, for example, all of the conflicts and the antagonisms within feudalism have to be given a justification. In slavery.
Okay, so this is it. He's getting into it. What's the antagonism? What is the thing that's keeping me from the lack? This is a big Peter Rollins thing, the thing that will make me whole and complete. So like if you have an ideology where it's just like, if we could just get there, which is fundamentally left brain, right? It's like your narrative of your reality. It's not reality itself. It's your narrative of reality. It's your explanation of reality. It's the propositional words that you put on top of the reality to explain it, right? And then if there's something keeping you from that, that leads into scapegoating, but then he'll get into it. You get this weird jouissance, this pleasure out of this scapegoating mechanism thing. So, all right, sorry. This is where he's really getting the meat.
The justification is might is right. In feudalism, the justification is often more ideological. This is God's will. This is the nature of the hierarchy of the system, the way things are placed in a certain kind of order. And capitalism has its justifications as well, right? So the different systems justify their position as being the way things are, the way they should be. And all of the antagonisms that are generated within these systems have to be explained away as contingent problems that can be sorted out. So in contemporary society, we may see homelessness, for example, as a contingent problem that can be sorted out within the system, rather than potentially a symptom of the system, i.e. the site that tells you the truth of the system itself. So it's like a cancer that can be cut out, rather than, as I say, a symptom that is the visible manifestation of a problem within the social body. So ideology has its, you have a belief, you have a set of, this is the way the world is. And in America, for example, you have Republican and Democrats kind of views of the world. And then you have some reason why you're not able to fully actualize the ideological vision. And this then becomes down to having an enemy, right? So ideology is inherently connected with scapegoating mechanisms. You need a reason for why it's not working. So you can point to some group and say, if only we could get rid of them, then everything would be fine, right? So
Okay, that part's key. Ideology is fundamentally connected to a scapegoating mechanism. If we could just get rid of that, maybe even like the people with the wrong ideas, then we would be okay. We'd be whole and complete. So you'll see scientists and scientific materialists talk about this, the Sam Harris's, the New Atheists, all those guys. It's just like, listen to Joe Rogan and these philosophical materialists that come on there. If we could just get rid of the people with the bad ideas. Politics fundamentally operates this way. Politics is like the, I don't know, it's the system of competing ideologies. At least modern politics. And like, if we could just get rid of the bad guys, the exclusivist religion of the right side of history, the people that are on the wrong side, the last remaining acceptable form of bigotry is against those with whom you disagree. If we could just get rid of those guys, then we could just go on to our utopian vision of the perfect thing, the reality without a lack, and that's what leads to Girard and scapegoating and demonizing the other. And I mean, he's going to get into this in a much clearer and fuller way. I got a phone call. I gotta just let it go to voicemail. I think it's a mechanic. You guys care. Ideology. No. So Nico, I would say this. Ideology is another word for religion. I don't think it is. Not, I mean, depending on how you frame that. If you're talking about religion as an institution and as a left brain narrative of what religion is, but that's like credo. Religio, the thing that binds you, the ligaments are hidden. They're inside. They're mystical. So true religion is this, that you feed orphans and widows, right? That's what the New Testament says. It's not, religion is embodied love, which for a Christian is incarnation. So, all right, but let's get back to Rollins. Because we're playing the video a little bit, not just me too much.
That's a scapegoat. Now, the next term, I think there's going to be three technical terms here: jouissance, ideology, and what's called objet petit a, right? Small object A. And I might just talk about object A, but it's objet petit a is the technical term. One of the real contributions of Slavoj Žižek's work in political theory was to show that ideology requires an objet petit a, right? And that's how it functions. And this is a term that comes from Lacan, and it's Lacan's greatest contribution to the intellectual field, in his own thoughts as well, as this notion of objet petit a. It's a very difficult notion. I'm just going to give again a very brief summary of what it means in context of what I'm talking about. Please bear with me. Once I've got all of these technical terms out of the way, we'll get to some examples, and then hopefully something that you can apply to your life. So objet petit a is often described as the object cause of desire. So there are objects that you desire. You might desire a meal, you might desire to go out with friends, watch a movie. So there's things that you desire. But there's also what causes that desire, what evokes that desire. And you can think about it in a very simple sense in which when you fall out of love, when you lose somebody you love, you don't just lose an object that you desire, something that you desire. You can lose the ability to desire anything, right? So it's not just that there's 10
That part is huge. I mean, honestly, really think about that. If any of you have had your heart broken, or this is like even depression or nihilism, you don't so much lose the object of your desire, what you think you want, you lose the ability to desire itself. I don't know. Like, I don't even know. Like, I know that's a big deal. I don't even know why, and I can't even explain it. Uh, it's huge, though. It's so true, and I think everybody knows this existentially, that to be true. I mean, unless you're just blessed with a certain temperament that uh, never, never gets melancholia or something.
And things in the world that you desire, and then you've lost one, right? You can lose things that you desire all the time, but whenever you lose this person that you loved, what you might experience is the loss of desire as such. You no longer desire any of the other things that once gave you pleasure. You haven't lost them, right? Maybe you enjoyed nature, going out walking in forests, and suddenly you don't enjoy that. It hasn't been taken away from you, but the object cause has been taken away from you, the thing that caused this to be desirable. Now, what Zizek shows, I think, very, very profoundly, especially in his book, The Sublime Object of Ideology, is that ideology requires an object A. So ideology is a system. You go like, this is the way the world should be, whether it's progressivism, conservatism, whatever. You've got a idea of the way the world should be. You have then some antagonisms. So you have an enemy, a scapegoat, that is the reason why your world is not an organic whole. And that exception, that problem, that is your object A. Now, I'm going to use a few examples. So in fascism, it's easiest to see. We can say, well, the object A of the fascist is the figure of the Jew. So the fascist has a vision of an organic society where everything works together for the good. The folk all work together selflessly for one another. Industry, government, the workers, all kind of in this kind of harmonious, non-technological worldview, right? So a technological worldview being a worldview which reduces people to machines, mechanisms, right? So if you read Mein Kampf, Hitler is always talking about this organic whole, and then he talks about a virus, right? Some exception that is stopping the system from working as a whole, and it is this figure of the Jew. Now, it's not concrete empirical Jews, so the Nazis would attack individual Jews, right? But because you'll always find in any group people you can attack, right? So if you've got this idea of the Jews are the ones who are in control of everything, and they have political power and govern, they've got power in terms of financial institutions and all of these ideas, well, of course you're going to be able to find individuals to attack. The figure of the Jew is not the empirical Jewish community. It's this phantasmic image that is required in order to sustain the ideological edifice. And it sustains the ideological edifice precisely by uh, making it desirable, because you go, oh, it's not really possible, right? That, it's not possible because of this community. We get rid of them and everything will be great. Well, the truth is, if you got rid of that community, everything wouldn't be great. You'd realize that that's just a symptom of something that is a problem within the system itself. Hegel calls this the beautiful soul, right? The beautiful soul is when you see yourself as innocent and good, and your community as being pure, and then they're evil out there. You see this obviously with kids who think there's, say, a monster under the bed. They don't realize the monster is within them. They're going through the phase of the beautiful soul. They are innocent and they are good. Therefore, they have to project all of anything, any conflicts and traumas that are within them out into the world, into a monster under the bed or something hiding in the cupboard. And part of growing is, and this doesn't happen in psychosis, the psychotic subject, but what you have to try to do is integrate that into yourself. Otherwise, it will continue to appear in the real. And if you have psychotic symptoms, then you suffer from things occurring in the real. You really do see monsters or angels and demons and stuff like that you haven't been able to bring that into yourself. Okay, so within fascism, the figure of the Jew is the figure of jouissance. Why? Because they are feared, they're hated, it causes anxiety, but it causes deep pleasure, deep enjoyment. You've got an enemy that explains why the system isn't working. That means you don't have to look at the deeper issues within the system. You have this phantasmic object. They are the object cause of desire. If you got rid of that community, you wouldn't be able to desire what you have, because what you have wouldn't work, right? It would collapse in on itself. And so the figure of the Jew is the object A, which is the cause of your desire and the exception that you attack. And that is, you think that the object A is what's preventing you from achieving your vision, but it actually sustains your vision. It's
So yes. Okay, Matt, Emily, exactly. You guys get it. Enemy is pleasure. Yes. Or militant atheists who demonize religion. Yes. But that is, yeah, that's exactly right. All right, let's go back, do a little bit more, and then I'm not going to go through the whole video today because I don't have time, because that would be way too long. And then I want to open this up and let people share their thoughts, I guess. Well, the video isn't that long, I guess. We're half done.
It's the very thing that sustains your vision. I want to give a few more examples. So for progressives, it is often the figure of the Republican, right? Again, it's not about individual Republicans. There's lots of individual Republicans who are probably idiots, et cetera, and vice versa in every community. But it's the figure of the Republican that you find empirical Republicans that you can attack, but you libidinally need this figure, this abstract, speculative figure. They are the object cause, and you get your jouissance from attacking them. For conservatives, it can be the woke millennial, right? That is the object A. They get profound enjoyment from attacking this kind of woke millennial type. And although there are woke millennials who are, again, idiots, right? It's not the empirical individuals. It's you require the speculative ideal of the woke millennial as the very means by which you continue to enjoy the ideological edifice that you affirm. Another example would be in reality TV. I've talked about this before, but not in relation to Object A. So what is the Object A for people who watch reality TV? Well, it is the figure of the non-ironic viewer, right? That your enjoyment is by imagining that there is someone who watches this reality TV show for real, even if it's the characters in the show itself, because that's often the case, is that you watch a reality TV show with the imagination that the people who are in the reality TV show aren't in on the joke, don't realize that this is ridiculous. When often, I think, I don't know much about reality TV, but some reality TV shows, the people who are in it are working on a script, right? They know that this is ridiculous looking. They play this part in order to make money. And how do they make money? Well, they make money because they embody the object A, the non-ironic participant, viewer or participant. And by the audience having that object A, which is really the source of their jouissance, they're able to watch. And because they watch, those people make a shit ton of money. Right? But even in terms of a relationship, perhaps you always find yourself going out with people who betray you. And there are lots of people in the world who will betray you. But maybe you kind of find this pattern and you realize, oh, there's something about the figure of a betrayer, of being betrayed, of someone who is standoffish and cool to me. That is my object A. It allows me to keep fantasizing about a person.
Okay, I want to talk about this comment, Nico, because you're in here providing the iron to sharpen the iron and push back. This whole thing's too left brain. It creates a super solid category of discussing abstractions. Would have thought you wouldn't like this kind of thing, Luke. Okay, so I would say that Rollins, and I hope myself, even though I fall into this sometime, are very it would be ironic, don't you think, if people who were talking about this thing then scapegoated and were libidinally invested in the people who disagreed with him. I still am. I mean, I'm just going to admit that. I'm still libidinally invested in people who don't see the things that I try to talk about. I mean, I know I am. I can feel it in myself for sure. Is that a good thing? I don't know. It just is. It's true. It bothers me. I mean, that's why I have salience for it. You know, I see the criticisms versus the agreement, and I would agree. Then it becomes left-brained, and you become trapped, because then that's the new ideology. That's the dishonest postmodernist. Even though there's an honest postmodern critique, which is right, if then the criticism of postmodernism becomes the new meta-narrative that's used to control things, then it's the pot calling the kettle black, or it's be careful you who judge, for in your judgment you condemn yourself. I hope, and I would advocate, that myself or not Peter Rollins would do this. I mean, I don't know Peter Rollins personally, so I only know how he presents himself online. I would love to someday. But he talks about this. I mean, he's aware of this, you know. So, I mean, maybe I'm misjudging your comment, but it's the same thing I always say, which back to Phlebas and saying that the thing that Nate talked about in the live stream really clarified things for him. In me criticizing propositional tyranny and propositionalism, I'm not anti-propositional. In criticizing confessions and confessionalism, I'm not anti-confessions. If you hold them iconically, that allows for the right brain to actually be the master, and it's the thing that actually allows for repentance and error correction, then it's fine. All right. We'll go back and play some more, look at some comments. We'll maybe get through it all. We'll see.
Perfect relationship, while always being in an imperfect relationship. And strangely, that's where you get your jouissance from. Now, I'm talking about this because this is happening behind our backs. Mostly we are not aware of our jouissance. We're just kind of getting on with life. We don't realize that central to what we are as subjects is that we extract enjoyment from our being in the world. And this ideological enjoyment, which you see all the time on social media, is a reactionary enjoyment. It's an enjoyment that creates scapegoats, creates enemies, creates social fragmentation, breaks the social bond. And it's incredibly dangerous. So what is the alternative? I'm going to talk about this more on my Patreon, by the way. If you enjoy listening to this or you want to support me, please do consider going onto my Patreon. And there's also my discussions and conversations we have on these subjects. Plug over. But emancipatory jouissance is the enjoyment that you get out of exposing this structure, out of moving beyond the beautiful soul, of engaging in self-critique, and you never get rid of object A. So it's not about getting rid of that, right? Because that's always a mistake, is to go, oh, we can somehow live without, we can embrace reality without object A, without the object cause of desire. We always have object causes of desire, but the emancipatory enjoyment involves what can be called traversing the fantasy, which is realizing the role that plays, seeing through it, right? Kind of realizing that the kind of people that annoy you are actually part of the very system that you're part of. So they can still annoy you, right? You can still dislike either the woke millennial or the Republican from Arkansas or whatever it is, or the non-ironic viewer of reality TV, right? We have the people who bug us, but also then realizing, oh, they're part of the same system. I can't split the world into goodies and baddies. In anthropology, it's called kind of dual organization systems, or whatever. It's not the yin and yang. The world can be split into two. It's like this is a certain, again, coming back to the homelessness thing, is homelessness isn't necessarily a problem to be solved, but a solution to a problem. There's a problem within society that creates certain kind of antagonisms that's solved by having a homeless population that can be policed, that can be imprisoned, that can be managed. And actually, if you want to get rid of that solution, you have to get rid of the problem that's operating more deeply within society. You can get your jouissance from that. Um, I'm going to tentatively give another example of this just in the realm of jokes, but this is difficult because jokes are very complex, it's very murky. But you can talk about jokes that ridicule and attack some other, right? And jokes that implicate you in the attack of the other. The first I would call reactionary jokes, and the second emancipatory jokes. Now, that doesn't in any way mean that jokes can't be offensive. If you go into any bar in Northern Ireland, you talk to people, you can only become friends with them when they tell you an offensive joke about being a Protestant or being a Catholic. You know, in the old days during the Troubles, one of the ways to break down difference and create a social bond was precisely through sharing offensive jokes with the person that you are attacking, right? And the way that works is if you tell an offensive joke, say, you know, in Northern Ireland, is a joke about Protestants or something to a Protestant, part of the joke is you're implicating yourself as I'm an offensive sectarian person, right? So by telling the joke, you're not only, you know, making a joke about a stereotype, you're making the joke about you being the type of person who is so offensive and sectarian that you would make a joke about stereotypes, right? So, but you're implicated in the enjoyment, right? So always emancipatory enjoyment is about a type of critique that doesn't split the world into goodies and baddies, does not scapegoat, does not have an ideological edifice and then have some exception.
Okay, let's go back and listen to what he just said. People critiquing him. He gets it.
That is about a type of critique that doesn't split the world into goodies and baddies, does not scapegoat, does not have an ideological edifice and then have some exception that you attack, which really is what generates your jouissance.
Okay, so he's saying, if you take him at his word, he's saying he is not doing that. And he'll get into that in greater clarity going forward. So, because he ends that way. He says even you can't even pursue emancipatory jouissance versus ideological. All you can do is bring it to the light. That's all you're allowed to do. He's saying something that you can't control this. It's not subject to your will. You can become aware of it. You can see it.
So what does all this mean? Well, in concrete terms, it's always important for us to ask ourselves, how do I get my jouissance? Look at what you do. Don't listen to what you say. Because in fact, the first thing you think, if you say, well, I don't get my enjoyment from X, that's often a hint that you do. In analysis, you watch out for the rejection, right? In analysis, you watch out for the person who says, I had a dream and it definitely wasn't about my mother, right? You go, I didn't even say it was, right? So the fact that you're saying it definitely wasn't about my mother, right, might mean it's about your mother. So if you're listening to your consciousness, listen to what you immediately say isn't the case, and then ask yourself whether the opposite's true. But also look at what you do. How do you act online? What kind of ways do you talk to your friends? And, you know, just begin to look at your own way of extracting jouissance from the world. And, you know, in just that act, not even trying to change anything, just the act, radical grace. Grace means you don't have to do anything. All you do is create a space where you can see yourself and potentially see something that you wouldn't want to see, right? So that radical space of becoming aware of your jouissance is enough to change it. So this isn't about changing from ideological jouissance to emancipatory jouissance. It's a more complicated idea. It's the idea that simply becoming aware of your jouissance changes your relationship to it. You can make an argument that all jouissance at its core is emancipatory once you become aware of it, or able to symbolize it, or able to understand it. So, okay, I'm just going to go over what we've covered. I hope it's clear. As I say, this is non-scripted. It's just a conversation. If you like these, please do let me know.
Not scripted!
We looked at how do we get enjoyment or jouissance out of life. There's the ideological jouissance, which has an enemy. The enemy is we think we hate, but we actually really don't. We love, right? We get something out of that anxiety, that hatred is sensual. It's an enjoyment, right? And that also means that you need that group, because that group might actually, be not great, right? But you need them. You actually need them because they provide you with your jouissance. Emancipatory jouissance is where you realize that the group you're attacking, even if it's a group that's not great, is part of a wider system that you participate in. And it's about trying to see that and understand it and work out what those deeper issues are. And in doing that, it's a productive type of enjoyment. Okay, so there you go. I will hopefully be back in a few days to talk about something else. The next thing I want to talk about, I think, is contradiction. I did a podcast the other day, which it gets released today, the first part and the second part in 2 weeks. And it was quite interesting. I talked to an analytic philosopher, so it got a bit heated by the end of the second episode, but it was a very enjoyable back and forth. But one of the things that he was pushing back on is this idea of contradiction. And so I want to talk about what contradiction means, different ways in which we can understand it, and what I mean by contradiction, especially because I'm developing something called Church of the Contradiction. All right, have a great day. Bye-bye.
All right. There we are. Stop sharing the screen. Just have my big, bright, super bright face. All right. So I put the link in. People can come in and say hello, let's play. Getting enjoyment from ideology. Well, he's saying that we do that. I would propose, this is what iconic vision is for me, or iconic thinking, probably more technically, is that we would hold a iconic relationship to our thoughts, which is essentially not being married to our thoughts, which allows you to repent of improper thoughts and move further up and further in, which is what everybody wants to do, but they think that they're in the exclusivist religion of the right side of history, so that everybody else should change their ideas because everybody else is the object A. So we are all caught, I would argue, in the ideology of the last remaining acceptable form of bigotry is against those with whom we disagree, the exclusivist religion on the right side of history. That is the modern consciousness. We are caught up in the ideology of being right. And my object A is fighting against that. So I actually believe through final participation in the evolution of consciousness that we can get to the place where people aren't ideological. I think it's possible. It's called good faith conversations. All right, let me look at some comments. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Foxman is actually on the right side of history. Now, purpose comes from object A. I don't know. This is something I don't know. I know, Parsons, you know Rollins stuff really well. And purpose comes from object A. Maybe, I guess, lightsaber. Depends on what you mean by purpose. Desire? See, I don't think desire actually comes from object A. Yes! If I could have chosen someone to come in, it would have been this beautiful man.
Have emerged.
Ah, I love you so much, and I miss you.
I love you, Luke. How could I not? You're like here, like playing Rollins videos.
Well, that's probably the first thing that actually connected us. Is I knew that you were into Rollins stuff, and I was just like, and you were like a little corner guy, and I was like, hell yeah. And then the more
I think maybe one of our first conversations was on Randos United. And we talked about Rollins. I even tried to talk to Paul about Rollins and Zizek, like
Dude,
way back in the
Paul
day.
doesn't want to talk about Rollins.
I know I don't know how to bridge that gap.
He has, like, he's tried. He's told me he's tried. I've pushed him on it so long. He's tried, and there's a different Rollins video that came out a little bit before this one that I know Paul watched. It must have really come up in everybody's algorithms because Paul was in the comments, and he made a comment about like, oh, maybe I'll eventually have to talk to Rollins and make superfan Luke happy. I really do think that the stuff that he's talking about is just such a huge piece that most people just don't get. And I think it's underneath so much of the conflict that's out there with people and disagreement and not having good faith conversations, really.
Yeah, I think so.
What does this mean? Desiring God. I was thinking about that book just the other day. Or actually, I was thinking about Future Grace.
Is that Piper?
Yeah, but they're all kind of the same thing. Just a little twist.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this before, but like Rollins was pretty important for me because he kind of like slowed the free fall as I was like trying to. Paul, I can't understand him.
I mean, but that's good. Your first tottering step towards understanding is realizing that no man understands anything. George MacDonald. So
yeah. I mean, when I was like going through my cliche deconstruction, like Rollins really helped like level me out. I liken him to a ferryman that ferried me across the river. And he's like one of those guys that's just sort of there if you need him, but I don't know if everyone needs him. Like he was like, the way he helped me is like, I can't even express it. You know, and it's almost like he's fulfilling this purpose of being sort of this figure on the other side of things. So the way that I think about it is like very, very simply and in broad terms, in my evangelical church, I wasn't allowed to doubt anything. So that was like the biggest thing. And as soon as like I started having doubts, like the only prescription is have more faith, don't do it kind of thing.
The faith of the
so yeah, there was no one having these kind of conversations. There was no one like there was no place to like try to think. It was just don't think about it. And it, you know, these things keep coming up. And so, but Rollins was the guy that was like, no, doubting actually proves that you have faith or something like that.
Yeah.
But it was like that. I was like, all right, so I'm not like deconverting or doing any, like, I can just ride this out and see what happens. Like, I don't have to make a decision. Because I had friends that were like, all right, I'm atheist now. I'm just going full bore and I'm not a Christian anymore. You know, I'm deconverting, all that. And I you know, Peterson, Rollins helped me to be like, you're all right. Just stick it out for a bit. You know, no need to like have to make huge decisions.
See, this is where like so I agree with all that. But even when you keep calling him Peterson, what that is to me is like you're just seeing through to the pattern or the unity behind Peterson and Rollins, which is meaning makers. They made meaning for you. They helped you traverse something that you couldn't traverse. And so like this is where people like, I think people call me, like somebody said in a live stream recently, like the embodiment of non-dualism or something. And it's like because
that's what I think a person is.
Yeah, somewhat. And I think that's what I do is I just like, you can be right and be wrong, or be wrong and be right. If you use the wrong technical word, it doesn't even matter to me if you're seeing if what you mean by that is the pattern behind it, the unity behind the distinction. Then I don't even care. I don't even hear it, honestly.
Right. I'll just call him Peterson.
Yeah.
No, but I've been trying. I have like 3 videos that I'm working on, and they're all like, one of them's Peterson, one of them's Piper. I'm going after Piper because he's got a 2 sermon series on the Book of Job. I don't want to derail this, but like his first sermon, great. His second sermon, I don't know what he's doing. Like he's like, as far as I'm concerned, he's off the reservation. He's gone off the rails.
Oh.
And I'm not a huge fan of Piper either. So it's
Well,
fine.
yeah. Well, I am and I am not. Like, I mean, that's a huge part of my upbringing. I've said a lot. Like, I
I
would
know
disagree
it
adamantly
always
with his
surprises me
theology.
when like you're still like, I still love Piper. He's a true believer.
He's I see in myself and in him the positive things from that kind of a formation and a tradition. And I think
Mhm.
if you can take the good from that while not getting trapped in the bad, it's beautiful. It's wonderful. You know, like if you can spit out the bones and keep the meat, it's
Yeah,
fantastic.
for
Like
sure.
that dude, I mean, he's got a ton of this Object A stuff going on. I mean, he has tons.
Did
I
you?
don't think that tradition is very self-aware
Yeah.
or
Did you see that one where he
self-analytical.
talked to the it was like the Conference of Christian Psychologists or whatever?
Yes, it's one of my favorite things. I shared it with tons of people. What do you think about
I,
that? It's so funny.
I think we
So
talked about it
funny.
back in the day, but it's so hilarious. He's completely unaware of what's happening. And
Oh,
like just people are laughing at him and they're not trying to be mean to him. They
no.
think he's like literally telling jokes and he doesn't even know he's telling jokes.
Yes, it's like it's almost a perfect example of
The unintentional comedian.
yes. Oh, it's so good.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
it's beautiful. And then at one point, like he realizes the phenomenon, like he becomes aware of it, but not really, not in the way. Because earlier on in this thing, I was saying, you know, it's kind of like grammar, logic, rhetoric, where you learn things and you can just repeat it, and then you
Mm-hmm.
can use it in your own words, like it kind of becomes your own, and then you can explain it to other people. It's almost like the rhetoric, poetic
Mm-hmm.
phase, and it can become theirs. You know, and
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like Piper within that moves from just like saying the things, the grammar phase, very intellectually, and then he like kind of gets into the like the next phase where he's recognizing it, but he just doesn't really get it. It's so
Yeah.
oh
Yeah,
man.
it was like because he's trying to like confess to him that he's like nervous to talk in front of him because they're psychologists and he doesn't want to be analyzed. So he like kind of jumps the gun and like starts confessing that he's a sinner and he has lots of problems and stuff like that. And like it was like it's like half conscious because he's like trying to like reflect on himself, but it's like he doesn't get the joke that's coming back. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah,
But
totally.
back to Rollins real fast.
Yeah, do it.
So if I had a question. Now I lost it because we started talking about Piper.
Sorry. Well,
Um,
if it comes back to you, there's some great comments too. Maybe
okay,
it'll
yeah,
come
bring up some
back.
comments.
See, like this, we can get to the place we're not ideological. That's like saying we can get to the place where people do not sin. Yeah, I mean that's called theosis. So I kind of do think that. Yeah. I mean, I would say that's like holiness. That's union with God in Christ, Christ in me, the whole mystery of Christ. I would say that's the same thing. I mean, ideology, I think, is like I don't know. It's one of the greatest principalities and powers I think we should actually be fighting against in the modern world. So, Jeremy says we could think of ideologies as a compression heuristic for dealing with combinatorial explosion. How do we divest ourselves of these compression heuristics without becoming overwhelmed? Well, that's the question, right? I mean, I spoke about that a little bit in my last live stream. Like, do you disabuse someone? I don't know if you heard that, Jess, but I was thinking of I've had this revelation almost of like coping mechanisms and even something like this, like even if someone is ideological, well, what if that is an angel in a very Rawlins way, like a symptom or an evolved part of your consciousness that is protecting yourself from something you're
Yeah,
not
I
ready
heard you.
for.
Mm-hmm.
Should you disabuse someone of that? I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer of that.
That's that thing where like if you clean out the house and you leave it empty,
Exactly.
demons come back worse.
That's the perfect passage to.
I think even when you were talking about that, I was like, that's why we need to tell the more beautiful story because you can disabuse someone of their misconceptions, let's say, if they're wrong about something. But then, like the more beautiful story, like comes in and sort of cleans house, and then
It doesn't
fills
just
up.
empty. It doesn't just empty the house. It replaces the demons in the house.
Yeah, it cleans house, but also fills it. And
Yeah. Yeah, true. And I mean that's true. And that's actually Nate keeps saying like I don't even disagree with him. I just don't like the way he talks, and that's why Nate wants to talk about like poetic things and stuff. But like also Nate, like this isn't if you don't take this stuff ideologically, like this. Like if you don't fall into the binary, this which is what I think you're doing, Nico. You know, God bless, you know. No judgment on this, but like ideology is the object A of Rollins. Well, kind of, yes and no, but he knows that. He's trying not to fall into his own trap, you know. And
Yeah, and I remember my question or my it's basically a statement. I wonder what you think about it though, because I think from what I know about Rollins, like he's just trying to get people to be self-conscious. He's not
yeah,
trying to get them to believe one thing or another, but just be
no,
aware
exactly.
and just point things. He basically just is pointing things out, wants people to be aware of it. Because he even said in that video, he's like, just by being aware that you have it, this thing, you get this jouissance from like having an enemy.
Yes.
He's like, just being aware of that, it's already changed.
Yeah, you just haven't recognized it fully yet or been able to walk into it. That's like the Rilke. The point is to live everything. He's like, you know, and don't like burden people with your questions, but just like live into the questions, and then perhaps you can live into the fullness of that reality, you know. So, and I think Paul, this comment is exactly right. That's atheism. Atheism, the object A of atheism was religion that made everything worse. And if we could just get rid of that religion, everything would be better and we'd be in utopia. So yes, they were emptying the house and worse things came. Exactly. I mean, that's exactly what happened, I think. Yeah. Well, and like this is not me. This is I think this is where you can simultaneously speak against something and say that it's not good, but not also just be like, oh, if we were rid of ideologies, the world would be perfect. You know, that's not what I'm saying. That would, because then I would be because then, yeah, ideology would be my object A. So I don't know. And then the one thing I want to say too is like, there's not. So I get what Nate is saying, but even like reading through Tomberg or something, and Tomberg's really poetic and symbolic and stuff. Like I don't, even though I'll say the things that I say about left brain and that you can get trapped there, I don't think that means that you don't have highly technical intellectual conversations.
Right. Well, that's
Like,
what I mean. Like Rollins is like using the left brain against the left brain.
Yeah.
It's like using the left brain to come up to that precipice of where the left brain ends. But
trampling down death by death, maybe.
Yeah, well, but there's, you know, when I was like going through my phase and into Rollins, like that's sort of where he never goes any further. That's why I like compared him, for at least me personally, he's like a ferryman. He got me across something that was kind of like treacherous and perilous, perhaps, but he didn't like. No, it's not that he's left brain; it's that he's boring. Maybe for you, Nate. Maybe for you.
Yeah, we like him.
We can like things too. Maybe Nate's my object A now. Sorry,
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I want you to put barbecue in my mouth.
I need brisket. Stat.
Jeez, everybody. Maybe I shouldn't do videos on Rollins. He's been so helpful to me, and I love him. And people that like hate what he's saying hate him, and even the people that agree with him hate him.
Yeah, I think. Well, like I was saying, like he brought me across something, but he never like helped me. Let's say.
Well,
there was a point where like the journey ended with Rollins, and like he knows that too, and he doesn't want to be the one that like leads you on, and so in that way, but there was like a stopping point for me where I was like my usefulness for Rollins is kind of like I'm like grateful for him, and then I'm also like I can't follow you. You're not going anywhere. And he's like, exactly. Okay. Proceed.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of, this is stuff I don't really understand. And it was being talked about in the Grail Country Discord, but he has these, and I think he referenced it in this video. He has like a 2-part series where he interacts with this. What the heck's the guy's name? There's some young Orthodox kid who has a YouTube channel, and it's like it's not just him. There's a couple of them in there where they're talking about, as this kid who's like sharp as a tack, about orthodoxy. He's a convert. I think he was just a philosopher. I've seen him talk to a number of other prominent philosophers. I've maybe seen him talk to like Zizek and stuff too, but or maybe David Millie Hart. I can't remember. He's a sharp kid. He has conversations I wouldn't be capable of, but he's talking to Rollins about differences between orthodoxy and like Rollins's Church of Contradiction, or like what he's working on now, this like absolute unknowing, nothing can save us, because that's a big Rollins thing, is like ontic unknowing, the ontic lack. He thinks the most fundamental thing is the lack. Like, I mean, I think that's, and I don't really
agree with him with that.
I don't
like,
know
I
what
think
I
I think he gets that from Lacan and Zizek, and I don't agree with them on that. But I don't know enough about Lacan. I know more about Zizek, but still, like, Zizek talks in a way that's like a little bit mysterious about some of that stuff.
Well, I think the debate though is hugely important to, I think, and interesting, because to me, I don't know, everything to me, I said this once and I think it's still true. The most important intellectual conversations are always about the nature and the relation of the God-man relation. It's like Chalcedon. It's really, it's what Cal and I are always talking about. It's like divine simplicity and process theism, like that thing. Do you lean more? Nate and Chezi were talking about this. Do you lean more into the transcendence, or do you lean more, or do you tend to lean more into the immanence? I think a radical view of, it's not even a radical view. I think the honest implications of the incarnation is that you lean into the immanence, and that the transcendent is apparent, is in the immanence. And so like for Rollins, I think that would be, because you could almost say, going through the history of philosophy, like prior to theism and like Vervaeke's non-theism, even, God is ultimately transcendent without any aspect of incarnation or representation, is nothingness, is the lack.
Yeah, I was even going to bring that up, is like the thing, like, so there is the lack, but the lack is qualitatively indifferent than everything all at once.
Well, right, because it's beyond any distinction. It's the monad. So the lack is nothing.
And you taught that to me, like back in Voxer days. Like that was like a big thing for me.
Well, that's nice. That makes me feel good. It's yeah, I don't know, that, like, that thing is so huge. Like there's nothing more fundamental than that. Like I was talking to my buddy at church about that, I brought up recently, and he was just been getting into Peugeot, and he started like asking me questions of symbolism and what Peugeot is getting at, and emanation and emergence, and he was just like, it wasn't making sense to him. And I was like, oh dude, this is my favorite subject. I could just talk about ontology all day. And I agree with Nate. Like it's what I want to like emphasize for all the critics out there is like, this is like a hobby. Talking about these things intellectually is like fun for me. Nobody, like, it doesn't even mean you have a fuller understanding of somebody who could never talk about these things intellectually. True understanding, the personalist understanding, what I would argue of like understanding this stuff fully, is Christ in me, is embodying Christ, is being God to the world. Like that's the best understanding. Like I don't give a shit if you ever talk about ontology. I mean, truly, I just like doing it. What does this mean? Double malt?
Like a malted milkshake?
Yeah, I guess. Don't lean into one more than the other. Well, that's the, Dave, isn't that that's the Miaphysitism, diphysitism debate. That's the Chalcedon debate, is like which has preeminence. And Cal and I have been, I don't know, because to me, Dave, tell me if I'm wrong, the Oriental Orthodox debate, or Catholic debate, sorry Catholics, whatever, whatever you want to call, like, what was the whole first, the church, and then the Oriental Orthodox, or they're the church, and everybody else is the schismatic, whatever. The debate was Jesus, divine and human natures, and then which is primary. And like the fear of the Miaphysitists was that if you make it like one, damn, this is where I almost need Sam with the technical language. If you make that like one thing, if you want to collapse it into one nature, the God would consume the human and it would just become one thing, and it wouldn't be held in attention. It would like absorb it, and so you wouldn't hold the distinction with unity. But if you lean into the human, then you negate the God and you deny the God aspect of it. And that's the whole, these are all these early debates of Christology. But I think what the incarnation means is that to be fully human is to be fully God. So I don't know. Is that heretical? What do you think about that? See, this is what Jordan Peterson, when like Paul says he's not a good conversationalist, that's how I do conversations. Like, especially when I was younger, I would like go up to the thing to ask a question, and I'm that guy that just like gives, like just talks for about 3 paragraphs, and there's like, is that a question? Or are you just like,
I'm trying to give context to my entire existence.
exactly. Okay. Pleasant peasant. Rollins is the guy who I was playing at the beginning of the video. If you go back, Peter Rollins, he's a philosopher who's a very interesting guy. Dave, I can't tag you, but I believe that diphysitism and myphysitism is describing the same thing using different emphasis and in 2 different languages. Yeah, I mean, that's the common, I think that's the ecumenical understanding now. But like, I would say you can't just like hand wave it and say, this is where I'm not like an arbitrary historian. Like,
is this the thing that has to do with like the son being begotten from the Father, and then?
Well, this is Sam. I need to text Sam and get him in here because he knows the church history better than me, actually, like much better.
Yeah, I watched his video with
Father DeYoung. That's so technical.
The end of it was kind of like going past me. I was like, I have no idea what they're talking about.
Well, it's 2 there. I mean, at that level, it's like 2 PhDs talking about early church history and just throwing around terms in a shorthand that like I'm like capable of following.
Yep.
So Dave, I believe that you really believe that. They are saying the same thing with different emphasis, nothing to schism over. Yes, but they did. So like what so you would say that the schism is just a disagreement. But this is the okay, so this is what I would say though, is like how to say this? They did schism though. And you could just say that they were like both, damn it, I don't know how to say this. They were both confused and misjudging the other, but like the different formulations, I don't know. This is something that's just this thing, there's nothing harder to talk about than this thing. I think the nature of the God-man relation. There's nothing more fundamental than it. It's really, really hard. Okay. Maybe if I read other comments, it will help me. Oh, Dave, look at this. I kind of do too, buddy.
What's I don't know. Can you give?
So that's the Oriental Orthodox formation, which would be here. How about I read it? Should we do that? So we can add clarity to flipping people. Or if I could look it up and like share screen or something.
Uh-oh. Luke and technology.
Did I disappear?
No.
Okay. I stuck at technology. So let's.
Should I keep talking to you so you know that you're still here?
Share screen. Don't show this again because let's share this. Share. Okay, can we see this? So myophysitism or henophysitism is an idea about the nature of Christ. The idea says that Jesus Christ had 2 different aspects, one godly and one human. It says that these 2 aspects are united in one nature. So that's the thing. Does he have 2 natures or one nature? They are indistinguishable and they coexist. This is very close to the idea of dualism, which says the mind and the body are separate things that combine to make one unit, the person. In the case of myophysitism, the separate things are Jesus' divine and human traits. And it is often considered by Chalcedonian Christians to be a form of monophysitism, but the Oriental Orthodox churches themselves reject this characterization. Recently, the Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches have begun to take this position more seriously. Which is...
Or henophysitism?
Yeah. Or at one.
What does Maya mean?
Kenosis by kenosis. Kenosis, one, at one meant.
And then what's the other one?
And then the other one is here. Let's just look at it. It's
And this is one of the things that was the
Diphysitism.
schism between
Doesn't
the
it say it?
Orthodox and the Catholics.
There should be a hyperlink. There's not. Is this not? No. No. Oopsie.
So that he had two natures.
Dio? Yeah, it's saying so there's two natures. Oh my gosh. This is not what I'm wanting.
Dio.
Technology.
DYO.
DYO. Yeah. See this? I don't speak Greek. Thank you. Dio. Why wouldn't monophysitism? Monophysitism is idea. Why wouldn't
They
it?
scrubbed it from Wikipedia.
Why wouldn't it have a hyperlink? As like usually it has the because this is Apollinarianism. That's where you're just like leaning into the divine more so, which is something that came up with Sam and Nestorianism. See, like all this stuff, like when you really get into the early church stuff, it's very complicated, you know. Miaphysitism, monophysitism,
Yeah.
Marcionites. Why isn't there a link to the opposing viewpoint? Good grief. Well, whatever. The other, this is where it's hard. This is where, like, even what I was saying earlier, you can like understand something and just repeat it. That's one level of understanding. And then if you try to explain something yourself, that's another level. And then explaining it to other people where they can understand it, that's like even another level. And so like me trying to explain these things, like I'm not even good enough. It will be hyperlinked higher up once. Orthobros don't police Wikipedia, apparently. Yeah. If I just type in Chalcedon, it'll show up, right? Chalcedonian Creed, Chalcedonian Council. Is that Ecumenical Chalcedonian Creed, Monophysitic Creed?
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Luke Googles.
Not well. This should have it. I mean, because good grief, controversy. But yeah, this is like where the creed came from. That I would think there'd be so much more information here. Whatever. I'm done. Done trying to do this. Stop sharing. It's super complex. Yeah. Well, and this is where, yeah, it is a rabbit hole. Sorry, Anthony. But this is where like even the Jewish or Sam, all the conversations with Sam about monotheism and Trinitarianism is complex. And why like Christians will say, and Nate was saying in that conversation with Hezi about that, in his understanding, it's almost as if like Judaism is much more, at least in my understanding, and maybe Sufi mysticism is this way, is much more complicated in its understanding of monotheism because it's obviously dynamic. But it's almost like Islam is so Apollinarian and just like up there and God is one that like it just doesn't even make sense to me. Anyhow. All right. Well, I think I just murdered the flow trying to Wikipedia things. Here we. I agree with the Miaphysite language more, but it's no big deal, guys. It's no big deal. And a lot of this is very true. A lot of the early disagreements are like Greek and Latin things, and like political, ethnic, tribal, nationalistic. Like people always say this of Augustine, like he couldn't speak or read Greek really, and he's like the man in the Western Church, and so that really locked things up. All right, so what else are you working on, Jess, besides, so you're doing the Piper Job thing?
I'm working on Peterson talking about Job.
Okay.
Because Peterson's been talking to people about Job. And so that video is almost done, but it's turned into a whole thing. And then there's another video of what is it? I can't remember now.
The other
But
video.
like, I don't have time to do anything. Like I'm
Yeah.
just constantly just doing my job, and then
So you're super busy. Do you want to make me a website?
yeah.
Uh,
I mean, like I'm today was like kind of a breath, and because I just sent off something late last night, and then I saw you online. I was like, oh, I could actually jump on and
dude,
talk.
I'm so happy that you did. Jeremy, Jess's channel is just Jess Proviance, right? Isn't it at Jess Proviance?
Yeah,
Is your handle or whatever?
Jess Proviance, Purviance.
Viance. Yeah. I'm gonna throw it up here because it's a heck of a channel. Like if you're not familiar with Jess's stuff and then the Job series and Sherry's on there all the time. I mean, it's excellent. It's excellent. It's me. Nate?
Well, I tried posting a comment as me, but it posted as Grail Country and Luke.
Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah,
tried
'cause
deleting it. I don't know what
yeah, I see. I thought that was Nate. That's what these streams get complicated because when you're doing it through Grail Country StreamYard, which we're both in, it will simultaneously do it as me because it's streaming to my channel and Grail Country, and then Nate will pop in sometimes from his own thing. It's confusing.
Well,
All
one
right,
thing
well-
I'm trying to figure out is like what to do next with all this stuff. Like I feel like there's been like the amount of fruit in my own life from like what's happened over the past like few years has been uh-oh. Did my video go?
Yeah, it did, but I can hear you.
Yeah, my camera went off for some reason. Anyway, let me hide my video or something.
Well, I think this is huge. Like what you're talking about. I want to hear what you're saying, but this is huge with me right now because I'm trying to think about vocational shifts and what I'm going to do. I made that video recently. Like, should you pursue your dreams with abandonment or let your dreams fall to the ground and die?
Yeah.
And there is no right answer to that, I suppose. Because really what I would love to do is talk to people all day about this kind of stuff and then perhaps even like counsel, mentor, spiritual director, guide. Phlebas, I feel like you're trolling me now. Jess has the best channel in the TLC, much better than Luke's nonsense. I don't even disagree with that. And because like this is the hard thing with my wife. I want to ask you about your wife and her relationship to TLC stuff, which is also a favorite topic of mine. So my wife has slowly evolved in her understanding of this. She knows that it's very important to me. And so she knows that the time that I spend doing this, she tolerates it, which I think is the right word because she knows that I love it so much, but she doesn't understand it at all. And I don't think that she sees really like any value in it. And part of that's just her personality and her temperament. But I don't know that she really understands or I don't even know if she really thinks there's any value in it for anyone else other than like just a meaningless hobby or something.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the question is, and like I don't even like because I kind of took a step back in the last few months. I just like disappeared for a bit from this corner, except for
MJ's advice. You took MJ's advice.
Whose advice?
This guy who's always leaving me like page comments and telling me that we're a cult and and that you should step back from the corner to reassess the truth of it because of how culty it is.
Well, part of what I'm trying to figure out is like what does this all mean? Like what are we it's the endless question of like what are we doing? Who are we talking to? Like what does this happen? And like I have like so much insight about things and like things I want to share, and then beyond that, like ways of doing things that are super helpful that have actually like spilled over into my real life. So like a lot of the ways we have conversation, whatever, like I've used in countless Bible studies and book clubs and whatever, and it's it works every time. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And my estuary has died. My estuary is dead, but all my Bible studies and book clubs are doing like great. So I'll turn this light on. But like that was all fruit from like the kind of stuff we were doing like here, and the way we were talking, and like how we were going about discussing things. And so that's good. That's something that's like actually spilled over into other areas of my life with positive influence, and that doesn't require someone having to come in and be initiated into what all we're doing, and like be familiar with Vervaekeisms and Paul Vanderklay's channel and all this stuff. And so I'm just trying to find those things where I'm like, oh, this works over here in this way, without having to like explain everything to everyone.
Yeah, that takes up a lot of time.
And so,
Alan.
Yeah. Hey,
Alan, are you ready to share? Are you just making jokes in the comments, you funny guy, you? You're muted. You're silent. I can't hear you at all. Yeah, for sure. The TLC wife thing is a thing.
My wife she's fine with it all, but sometimes she's weirded out by it.
Yeah.
Almost all the time she's fine with it.
Yes.
Other times it's a little bit weird. And then I think me and her are going to Seattle for the event up there.
Oh, Nate? The Grail Country thing?
She does better. Like, she's not an internet person. Like, she does Instagram and chats with people, but it's all people she knows.
She's not an internet person.
Yeah, I'm just like, I guess I'm an internet person.
Yeah, it's weird. It's this weird phenomenon. I've embraced it now. I never would have dreamt that I would be an internet person. It's weird to me. I probably had a lot of mischaracterizations about them, that they're just angry boomers on Facebook, or incels, or just very sad people. I'm not that sad. I mean, I am kind of sad, but I'm not that sad. Alan.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Great. Because now that all the smart guy stuff is done being talked about, I can enter in on the stupid cultural commentary stuff.
What do you think about Object A, Alan? And
I've always been more of a B guy, to be honest. But if it floats your boat,
Yeah.
If it floats your scapegoat, then
floats your scapegoat.
No.
This is good. This is what we need. We need philosophical puns.
Yeah, that's how you get into. That's how you explain it. That's the rhetorician. See, I got to the rhetoric phase without any of the logic phase. So
there it is.
You just jump it. You ramp off of it.
That's right.
And then you jump straight. So you don't actually need to understand any of the stuff you're saying, which is
logic.
A specialty in the TLC. But yeah, I just jumped on when you started talking about I just really when you talked like the integrating the ideas and like how you live these things out, and it just to me is like there's just no separation. Even Luke's like these are all needs that like there's nothing unpragmatic about what's going on here. It's just the side of things that's less physical and tangible. And definitely
clip that, share it with my wife.
And it's just in my life, I go to a very more, I mean, it's like comes out of the Pentecostal tradition, non-denominational, very like literalist, but like I never feel like an outside, like I feel so integrated because I'm like, okay, you're talking about something at one level, but like there's no separation between us. There's no like, okay, that's fine. Like it doesn't bother me in any way. And I like now I have a community and we're going to dinners and we're throwing a frisbee in the park, and there's nothing more like tangible than like, oh, well, anybody who feels like an outsider or a loner could just why are there so many lonely people if they could just all get together, right? Like that's the joke. I was like, oh, if there's so many single guys and single girls, why don't they just pair up. And it's like, because there's a canyon and there's a divide, and that divide needs like a philosophy for us to like, needs a way that we actually can like understand these other people as like community and home and like communion and coming together. And yeah, in my life, I definitely needed that. Like those ideas needed to change. The right ideas needed to get into my head, to like have these things. And so I don't really see it as any form of divide. And even, you know, Luke with his career talk, it's just like, yeah, you have a need to pursue the like spiritual side, but you also have a need to eat food. It's like that need is not any like less real. You know, all these other needs, none of these needs are unreal, but at the same, you know, so it's just the linking together. It's just the like how we walk through it. And yeah, so I know that sounds a little rambly, but just seeing how the spirit, like seeing that there's one spirit that's going to flow through all these things, like it's super helpful. And feeling connected to all these people who I could never talk about TLC things with, but I'm like, no, but we're here. We have communion. Like we're together. That's not having this awesome debate where you're like 2 hours of talking about, you know, Lacan or whatever, or Peugeot or whatever. It's not any more or less real than just like having a dinner with someone and like asking, you know, and having this like physical communion. You know, we've all built a shed with someone and been like, this person is personality wise completely different than me. You know, not built a literal shed, but like done a physical activity. But at the end, you're like, oh, I feel so close to this person. And that closeness isn't more or less real than the closeness of I had an intellectual debate with someone. And I feel very close with them. So yeah, sorry. That was my 2 cents.
No, it's good.
Yeah, I mean, one of the downsides is just the logistics of having friends on the internet is like if I have friends in real life, eventually, you know, I'm going to be in the same physical location with me, my wife, and them. And then with the internet, like you got to be a little more intentional if you want, you know, your wife and family to be involved. And then it just sort of gets weird where you're like, hey, come on camera, guys. Like no one's doing that. And like you're like,
Some are.
Yeah, some are. And
yeah,
then, but I don't even know if that works or like my wife would not enjoy that at all. She'd be like, what are we?
My wife would not agree to it. I've had conversations with her about it, or like even meeting TLC people in real life. Like she has a selected group. There's like some, like the ones I really know, like she'd totally meet you, Jess. But if it's just like somebody she's doesn't hear me talk about all the time, she's like, no, I'm not going to meet one of your weird internet friend people.
Yeah, but that's also like part of the identity. Like you should also be okay with things having barriers. Like even I think we really struggle in modern society of being like identity of like, oh, the clothes I wear to my office are the same that I wear to home now. And it's just like, it used to be, you had ritual, you had, this is all these, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a worker, I have this hobby. And like,
right. And you can just go through those roles.
Yeah. And this idea of like, oh, I don't know if you'll like him because he's this other thing, but I'm going to mash you two together. It's like, no, it's actually okay to have relationship with two people who wouldn't like each other. It doesn't have to be transitive in that way. I can, and I just, yeah, like it's, you know, I talked about that summer camp I worked at a lot. And it's just so funny because all these identities of being at a summer camp and working there of like some guy who's really good at throwing a football is like a heroic figure. And like, then the parents would come and you try to explain to your parents like why this guy's so cool, and your parents are just like, he's a 22-year-old loser who like, you know, goes to community. Like, what do you mean he's the coolest guy you've ever met? And I'm like,
Superman.
Yeah, that's Superman. And
I don't understand what happened this week. It was incredible.
Yeah. He threw the ball over the building. You wouldn't believe it, you know? And just like, it's just like that. But it's not about, the child doesn't have to spend his time convincing the parents like, no, he actually is awesome. But the child's experience of seeing that as a heroic figure or like a figure of excellence is not any diminished, because that is like an instantiation, but that might be particular to that person in that place, like to the experiencer. But yeah, I mean, that sounds like fancy, but it's just like, to me, it's like, yeah, like, some of the guys at my church are doing like cigar night, and you tell it to like a lot of the girls, like, oh, we're doing cigars, and they're like, just immediately like, I hate that, that's disgusting, I hate that. And I'm like, you're not even invited, it's for the guys. Like, why do you even have to say those things? It's just like, but it's
This
okay.
is what we're doing. I hate it.
Yeah. This is we're spending our time privately without you. I would never go. I hate it. But it's just the thing that I'm just like, it's not an argument or a debate. It's just like, yeah, good. That's fine. Like, if anything, I'm glad that you hate it. But like, that's totally okay for you to have that reaction and for me to like the thing. And there's no contradiction there. There's no.
Yeah, we can like different things, or even people in the comments, my object A, people that are criticizing me. It's like, you don't have to like this. This is fine. You don't have to like it.
Yeah.
But then the question is, Rollins would ask you, why are you here if you don't like it? Because you're hate watching it, because you're getting some jouissance out of it.
Oh yeah. I just think that like all those tensions, like, it's okay we don't have to mash together all our identities of like being a good husband and being a fan of comic books, or like it's not this like, the peas and carrots don't have to mix together. You can totally be 100% whatever, the best TLC member possible, and then your family doesn't have to know anything about it. It's like, oh, well, my mailman can't deliver my mail without knowing about Paul Vanderklay. It's like, we've never.
I chase him down the block.
Yeah, Chuck, I know you want to just deliver some Land's End magazines, but, you need to know that the lamb that is slaughtered at the foundations of the earth actually is the reason for all things. Duh.
I love you.
It's a matter of you're wrong, Luke.
But yeah, so I mean, in the same way, like, I mean, we sort of get these feelings of like, oh, but it's my wife, it's my friend, it's my and I don't know, my experience, especially recently, and like the type of church I go to and all these things, is like just being very okay with these things not crossing over. And when you take that stance, like I'm doing a movie analysis night with people, like you can get really little, like if you just peel it back to just like a teardrop, like you can put just one thing in and be, me just being like, wow, isn't that interesting that the Iron Giant died and then came back? Wow, interesting, cool idea, right, guys? And
yeah,
not being like, okay, there's a Peugeot film that's 3 hours long, but you're just gonna watch it, and then I'm gonna force you to think. It's like, oh, yeah. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. That's okay.
Yeah, I've found those things like super helpful in the Bible studies and book club I'm part of. Like, so we're like in the guys' Bible study I'm a part of. It's like Monday nights, like every other Monday. It's probably one of the best Bible studies I've been a part of. And we went through 1 Samuel, and now we're in 2 Samuel. So like the life of David, Saul, and then David, King David. And like I'm directly drawing on like all the stuff we talk about, but it's always in reference to like the specifics in the story. And because it's in reference to the specifics in the story, people are like really engaged in it. And you can tell when something, lands well. And just like you were saying, like, oh, isn't that curious about this and that? And I'll see some sort of like pattern from one chapter to the other, and then I'll point it out, and then like all of a sudden these guys will just start chatting and like it's talking
like,
about it.
That's amazing.
And, like, I don't even have to do anything. Like it just like, and I'm like, okay, that was a thing that I like. And then there's other time. Well, in my book club, we're going through the space trilogy because my estuary died.
That sounds dumb. I'd never do that.
C.S. Lewis's space trilogy. And like
so you guys still believe in space. Okay. Well, I'm going to look it off.
Like the first book, and arguably the books get better as they go, but like the first book, like the first 2 book clubs we did, it was like kind of like I was doing most of the work. I was like talking most of the time and like doing all the stuff. Second book, things started kind of rolling. And the last one was awesome. Like people were like contributing, like it almost felt like this kind of vibe. So
like it's catching on. It's like TLC is overcoming the world.
But it's like small group skills, or I don't know, like something like dumb and practical like that is what we're learning.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
like how to talk to each other.
This is who damn, why do I never remember his name? Way back in the day, early on, was in Paul's Estuary, but he said church has become a masculine space with feminine language when it should be a feminine space with masculine language. That's what you're talking about. That's good conversations. You want a feminine space, it's hospitable, but then very masculine language. Like, it's okay to say things strongly and to disagree, but if the space is feminine, you're not gonna, everyone's gonna be welcome. You know, that's fine. That's a what it reminds me of, what Jess was just talking about too, or what both of you were talking about, is I remember when Sam, and Sam's good at this anyhow, but like Sam had Drew Johnson on his channel a while back, and Drew, there's like 3 different places in there. If I had a, you know, some slave troop of whatever monkeys like Grimm has, I would tell him to clip it all. But there was like 3 parts in there where Drew Johnson was just like, Sam would say something and he's like, wow, that's kind of amazing. I've not thought about that. And all it was like TLC pattern recognition stuff. And Sam's doing it well, obviously, because Sam's good. But it's just like these skills, I think, that Sam has learned, and Drew was just like amazed. And I'm just like, yeah, welcome to the future.
Y'all ready for this? Bum, 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 bum. No, I mean, and also like I think it's a little bit of a category error to say like to what your point, Jess, was of like, these aren't like, oh, you can only learn how to make eye contact by being in the corner. Like, it's like, you know, it's like it might be through the corner that you learn some of these skills, but just like, these are just truths that we came to through the corner. And it, you know, and I think that one thing we just have to do is like, yeah, like these are truths that we've like, there's nothing, don't demean them in any way, like respect the corner, respect what's happened. But at the same time, don't prioritize those truths over other truths. And like, that's the way, like, I'm able to just like chat about someone's day and not feel like, oh, I need to bring up what I learned in the Peugeot stream. And like that, there's no, I think that harmony of all these different things that are true, like that's leading us towards, you know, ultimately God and ultimately, and like, hopefully the good life and these things. And, you know, so yeah, that's sort of goes back to our original, like, how do you integrate? It's like, well, if the corner taught you how to like have a good small group, how to talk to people, how to listen, how to hear someone's story, like, how is that not going to integrate? There's so many people who, I mean, listening is like, if you can learn that from PVK, he's such a good example. I mean, if you can listen, like you know, someone will slip one thing into a 2-minute conversation where you're like, okay, you care a lot about this. And if I ask about it, we could have like a 3-hour conversation. And it could be the most like generic, they'll be, you know, complaining about their boss, you know, but when you get really good, you'll see that like they really do want to talk about this. There's a reason they said that. And I don't know, but that's just one skill that we're going down. But I just want to make the point of like, this is happening between us, among us, you know, these truths are like being embodied. So, but yeah, but the worry is not like the worry is just correctly integrating, is not getting either too dismissive of the corner or too bullish on the corner, and just being like, wife, you're being really boring right now. Could you talk about, you know, like this other topic, you know, like swiping on your phone, you know, YouTube shorts, just being like, wow, child who made macaroni art, like that's kind of sucks. Have you ever tried like making something with AI on the internet? That'd be a lot more interesting to look at. Just like realizing like you're falling into some kind of, I mean, you might even say sin when you do that, you know, because you're not attending to the what's in front of you.
What's actually happening.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I gotta go because my daughter just came downstairs and was just like, "Can you come talk to me, please?"
I'm
so
hungry,
talk to your
Dad.
Friend.
Dad, we haven't eaten in 4 days because you've been screaming.
That's right.
Get back upstairs and start clipping this chat. Start clipping this. Get back upstairs.
Let's turn the little corner into just like a sweatshop.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go too. First of all, my webcam is goofing and I got stuff to do.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay here alone and just look at the chat. But no. All right. Nice meeting you, Jess.
Yeah, it was good meeting you too, Alan.
Yeah. See you.
I'll see you around. Bye, guys.